Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our first Redistricting Task Force public hearing. Um, you have we already introduced the members of the task force?
No, ma'am, that would be you.
Oh, okay. Well, I'd like to make sure that everyone that's joining the call today know who these August astute, phenomenal people are that serve on this task force. So, Salvador Espino.
Present. I am happy to be here.
Great. Graham Norris.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Great. Craig Allen couldn't be with us this evening. Bert Williams.
Bert is having some computer issues, so he's going to be listening in. He's calling
Great.
into the meeting, but he was not able to log on to the WebEx.
Okay. Linda Kennedy. Linda, you there?
I'm here.
Great.
I am here.
Great. Tony DeVito.
Yes, ma'am. Present.
Hello, Mr. Tony.
Hi.
Tracy Scott.
Hello, thank you. Happy to be here.
Great. Kent Bradshaw.
I'm here too. Good evening.
Bill Shore.
Yes, I'm here.
Great. And Teresa Ayala.
I'm here.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the members of the 2020-2021 City of Fort Worth Redistricting Task Force. Our task this evening is to hear from you, the residents of Fort Worth, about your plans and your concerns and in redistricting. So with that, we'll take it away to Fernando Costa, our Assistant City Manager.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. We appreciate your leadership of the Redistricting Task Force and the participation of all our task force members, particularly struggling to use the WebEx technology this evening, but we're very fortunate to have it at our service. And of course, we appreciate all of the Fort Worth residents who are participating in tonight's hearing. We have at least 44 attendees who are present at this time, and at least 12 who have indicated an interest in speaking at this hearing. I'd like to say just a few words in the way of background and then introduce a short 7-minute video that provides the public with basic information upon which to provide us with comments. The Redistricting Task Force was appointed by the Fort Worth City Council in August of 2020 with the 11 members whom Ms. Miller has just introduced to you. And the council gave the task force the charge of advising the council about redistricting criteria and procedures. The Redistricting Task Force will not be redrawing council district boundaries. They will simply be setting the rules by which the city council eventually will be redrawing those boundaries. And it's important to note at this stage that the resolution creating the task force contemplated that the council, rather than an independent redistricting commission, would redraw the council district boundaries. The idea of creating an independent redistricting commission has been discussed by many of the residents who have spoken to the task force in various task force meetings. But Ms. Miller has explained that the creation of such an independent commission lies beyond the formal charge of the task force. The task force has met as a group on 3 separate occasions in September, October, and November. In September, the task force received a series of informational briefings by city staff about redistricting history, the schedule for redistricting, the legal basis for redistricting, and a demonstration of redistricting software. In October, the task force was able to engage in discussions with representatives from the city of Austin and the city of San Antonio about the criteria and procedures that those cities used after the 2010 census. They also received briefings on the Voting Rights Act and on local demographic trends. And then in November, the task force, after receiving additional demographic data, discussed their preliminary findings and reached consensus on a draft set of criteria for consideration by the public. In December, Chairwoman Miller, on behalf of the task force, presented an interim report to the City Council, and the Council authorized the task force to proceed with a series of public hearings. As we've indicated, we scheduled a total of 3 public hearings. We actually began with an educational seminar held last Monday, which we called Redistricting 101, providing background information about the redistricting process. I know many of you were able to attend that seminar and provide us with insightful questions. We have our first hearing tonight, and we have 2 more hearings. On Tuesday of next week, the 19th, that hearing will be conducted entirely in Spanish, but we would like for all of the task force members to attend and receive translations or interpretations of the comments in Spanish. The comments will also be available in subtitles throughout that hearing. And then the third and final public hearing will be held on Thursday, January 21st, again in English, with Spanish subtitles. The task force will reconvene on Thursday, February 4th, for its final scheduled meeting to review all of the public hearing comments and agree upon final recommendations. And the task force then will present its final report to the City Council on Tuesday, March 2nd, at the City Council work session on that date. The council will be able to consider a resolution accepting that final report at the council meeting on Tuesday, March 16th. If there are any questions from the task force members at this stage, we'll be happy to entertain them. Otherwise, I'd like to proceed and ask staff to present a brief video with background information. Thank you, Catherine.
One moment, let me just make sure we have the video up loud enough for everybody. I would suggest sometimes these are not as loud as you would like them to be. So if you wanted to make sure that your video is up on your screen, that would be great.
Catherine, there's no volume on it at all.
Say that again.
You might start over again. There's no volume. There's no audio.
Just a second. Try it one more time with this browser and see if this works, okay?
Catherine, if maybe the volume is on your computer?
I'm sorry, are y'all still not able to hear this?
No, there is no audio.
There is no audio. Yeah.
Hold on just. Okay, hold on just a second. Ruth, can you take over and see if you can get it to do it? It's not changing anything on my end.
Yes, can you make me the host? And what was the title of the
Ruth, are you able to do it on your end?
Yes, can you send me the link?
Will do. It can't be a WebEx without some type of a technical issue. Thank you so much for your patience. It's in the chat. Ruth. We can't hear it, Ruth.
I suggest that we just run the video and we can narrate it as we go.
I think that might be a good idea. Okay. Okay, Fernando. Would you like to?
Sure. Well, the video begins with information about the origins of the Redistricting Task Force, explaining that the council would be increasing in size from 9 to 11 members as a result of a recent charter amendment, and that the Task Force on Race and Culture had recommended that we use redistricting as a way to ensure that we have proper representation of the community's diversity. The council then appointed the task force, comprised of 11 members, with the esteemed Lorraine Miller serving as chair. And here's a wonderful picture of Miss Miller with some familiar faces.
Why would y'all do that?
She is a distinguished graduate of the University of North Texas and served as clerk of the U.S. House of Representatives under Speaker Pelosi and worked with Speaker Foley and Speaker Wright. And it goes on about Lorraine Miller.
Cut.
It was actually rather embarrassing.
Yes.
And then it lists the other esteemed members of our task force.
Yay.
Bert Williams is a former city council member, as is Salvador Espino. Every one of these individuals deserves his or her own introduction. But you can see the council districts which each individual is representing. And then we hear about the importance that Mayor Price and the council assign to the work being performed by the Redistricting Task Force. And, here you can see Ms. Miller delivering the interim report to the council at a work session in December. These are the criteria: approximately equal size for each council district. These are the draft criteria being presented by the Redistricting Task Force. A differential of no more than 10% between the biggest population district and the smallest. Compliance with all pertinent laws, including the U.S. Constitution, Voting Rights Act, Texas Constitution, and other laws. That's another criterion. These are all high priority criteria. The first 5 are high priority. The next 5 are lower priority in the estimation of the task force. Creating minority opportunity districts. These are districts.
It's the redistricting thing.
In which at least 50% of the residents are classified as minorities, Hispanics, African Americans, and others. Containing communities of interest in single districts, not splitting up neighborhoods and other geographic areas that represent residents with common interests. City council districts should be contiguous.
Costa, one of the city council.
Connected to each other. The districts should be compact. They should be cohesive with identifiable geographic boundaries, physical features that delineate these geographic areas, containing whole voting precincts so that we don't split them, and whole census blocks or block groups. These are the units of geography by which we receive population data from the Census Bureau and do not consider the place of residence of incumbents or potential candidates. This is not intended to be a way to preserve incumbency. And the task force this evening will want to receive public presentations with a maximum of 3 minutes each, just as we have done in the various task force meetings. And here you can see a map of the existing council districts. Again, we'll be going from 8 single-member districts to 10 with the 2023 election. For the 2021 election, which is coming up in May, we'll keep the same 8 districts that we currently have. And so after this series of 3 public hearings, the task force will be discussing comments on February 4th and then delivering its final report to the council on March 2nd, with the council acting on those recommendations by the 16th of March. In July, we should be receiving the population data from the Census Bureau, and in August, we'll be able to begin the process of redistricting itself, going into effect with the May 2023 election. For more information, please check the city's website as you see on the screen. For texas.gov/redistricting. You may also submit comments and questions to the email address that appears on the screen. And that's it.
Okay, so now what we're going to be able to do is go ahead and start our public comment period. And I do want to tell you that this video that is lovely narrated, I promise, in English and in Spanish, is available on the website. And for everyone that logged in with their email address, we'll also send you a link to that so that you can view that on your own time as well. So the first person that we have that signed up to speak is Jill Freer. So Jill, if you are on, if you could unmute yourself. Jill Freer. I do not see Jill listed. Oh, I do see her listed. Hold on just a second. Jill? Jill?
Oh.
Can you hear me,
Yes,
Jill?
it sounds like I'm unmuted now. Thank you.
I can hear you. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Go
so
ahead.
much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you very much. Dear Lorraine Miller and the entire task force, my name is Jill Freer and I live in Fort Worth at 2916 Merrimack Street in District 9. The Redistricting Task Force has outlined important criteria to follow in the redistricting process. However, the task force was also charged with determining procedures. As a part of the procedures, I urge you to recommend to the City Council the creation of an independent redistricting commission, also known as IRC, to draw the new City Council district maps. Doing so will avoid the appearance of gerrymandering and build trust in the process. Setting up an IRC was a recommendation of the Fort Worth Race and Culture Task Force. And you've also heard testimony of how critical the Independent Commission was to the successful redistricting in Austin, Texas. In spite of the compelling reasons in favor of creating an IRC, the City Council wants to maintain ironclad control of the redistricting process. I think it's a bad idea for council members to determine the districts that elect them. Rather, they should be created by our citizens through an open and transparent procedure. Our group, the Citizens for Independent Redistricting, thinks it's important to continue to go on the record in support of an IRC. Please consider that Fort Worth has zip code 76104, with the lowest life expectancy and one of the highest infant mortality rates in Texas. Although the city is about 40% Hispanic, there is only a single Hispanic council member. Our public transportation is dysfunctional, and if you need to commute on a regular basis. In some zip codes, there are no regular grocery stores. Following the Tatiana Jefferson homicide, it was necessary for the city to bring in an external evaluating board to try to address systemic problems in the police force. This is where the present system has taken us. A fair city for the rich and an impossibly difficult place for the less fortunate. Clearly, we have to find a better approach to local government. While some of the task force members support an IRC for redistricting, it is not clear that all of you do. I hope that you are moved enough to come to a consensus on supporting an IRC and persuade the City Council to consider this as a procedural recommendation. Our citizens can only be represented well when the maps are drawn fairly and independently of all political bias. Citizens need to know that they matter to the city, that their vote counts, and that they have fair representation. Only then will they engage and become active in civic government. In summary, I request that you recommend the procedure of setting up an independent redistricting commission to the City Council in addition to the criteria already identified. Thank you very much.
They normally don't put their rating on it because they don't want to see too much.
Catherine, are you still there? I believe our next speaker is Dr. Bruce Miller.
Yes. So if we could just remind everyone to please make sure that you have your volume up whenever you're speaking so that everyone can hear you clearly. And if you are not speaking, please make sure that you keep yourself on mute so that we don't have any feedback. Mr. Miller, are you ready to speak?
Yes, I am. So, Bruce Miller here for Citizens for Independent Redistricting. Because of my background in statistical physics, it was natural that I became interested in redistricting following my retirement from TCU. I have followed and attended all of the meetings of the Redistricting Task Force. At the October meeting, TJ Costello gave a clear and compelling presentation of what was achieved in Austin through the establishment of an independent redistricting commission, an IRC. This is the procedure that the mayor's Race and Culture Task Force recommended that the city of Fort Worth consider in its 2018 report to the city. Mr. Costello explained the mechanism for creating an IRC. He explained that the vetting process resulted in a highly qualified, nonpartisan, and racially balanced commission that was dedicated to its task. He demonstrated that it resulted in growing political engagement in Austin, with 72 candidates running for 10 council positions. This is the kind of engagement we need in Fort Worth, where at present less than 10% of registered voters participate in municipal elections. Part of the charge of the Fort Worth Redistricting Task Force is to recommend redistricting procedures to the City Council. At the October meeting, Mr. Espino and Mr. Bradshaw spoke in favor of an IRC, and Mr. Schur pointed out that this was the direction that other cities were following. Mr. Espino explained that an IRC follows best practices for city government. Today, 14 states and numerous cities are engaged in creating either independent or nonpartisan commissions. If we want to have an engaged and aware citizenry, an IRC is the right approach. since we are simultaneously receiving a new census and moving from 8 to 10 council districts. This is the right time for this move. In the previous council redistricting cycle following the 2010 census, Fort Worth citizens played an active role in creating the present districts. In a series of open meetings, they submitted 9 independent maps that were taken into consideration in creating the final product, proving that our citizens can be trusted with this important process. It's now time for the city to take the next step and create a fully independent commission. This transparent process will result in a racially balanced council that will preserve communities of interest, avoid the appearance of gerrymandering, and lead us forward for the next decade. The Redistricting Task Force already heard numerous public comments at their open meetings in support of an IRC, and not one person spoke in favor of the council retaining that power.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. If you want to finish your sentence, that would be great.
I just have 2 more sentences, if you'll let me.
Go ahead.
I would just say that in summary, the current task force has a unique opportunity to bring constructive change to Fort Worth. I hope it decides to step up for our citizens, rich and poor, white and black, Latino and Asian, and set the city on the right path. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Ms. Janet Brown, if you could unmute yourself, please. Is Janet Brown here? Let me check and see. Okay, I'm unmuting you, Janet.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. If I'd known I was following Bruce, I would have conceded my time to Bruce. I recommend that I request that you recommend that the council appoint an independent redistricting commission that represents the diversity of the community, that represents the diversity and the makeup of the city of Fort Worth. I commend you for your other recommendations, but I think that your recommendations are missing the mark without the independent redistricting commission. Thank you. That's the extent of my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Brianna Williams, if you could please unmute yourself. Okay, double check and make sure.
She might be under Bree Williams.
I've got her. Yeah, okay, I am unmuting you right now.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
My name is Bree Williams. First of all, thank you very much to the task force for hosting these public meetings. And I do appreciate the criteria that's been presented before us. And just to echo everything that my fellow, that my fellow citizens said earlier, I just strongly advise that this task force continue to push for an independent review commission. Although, as I stated, I'm excited about these public hearings, excited about the criteria. That excitement is moot when I think about the fact that at the end of the day, if there's not an IRC, these suggestions are still left to the hands of the folks that will draw the lines that determine who votes for them. And so I just want to, like I said, I won't take up too much time, but I just want to echo what's already been said by everyone else, that great criteria. I think this is a great starting point, but if there's not an IRC and if there's not a consensus among the task force members to push for there to be an independent review commission, I don't have much faith in the city council adopting even a small percentage of what's listed on this criteria, or even that it would be a representation that's fair and equal and just for all of the members in all of the zip codes within the city of Fort Worth. Thank you very much for my time.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Mr. Bob Willoughby. Mr. Willoughby, can you please unmute yourself? Okay, I believe that you had called in on a phone line. Mr. Willoughby? Okay, hold on just one second. Let me see if I can. Yeah.
Hello.
Mr. Willoughby?
Hello. Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay. I can hear you now. You have
Oh,
3
good.
minutes. Perfect. We're
Good.
ready for you to
I'm
start.
out of the code. I'm in from the code. Okay.
You're
Yes.
good.
Quickly, I'd like to say my name's Bob Willoughby. I live in District 5. And if the first speaker that called in tonight is interested in running for mayor, I think she'd get my vote. Secondly, I'm endorsing everything everybody says, but I'm going back a little bit further here. There's a lot of things there's so many things wrong about this. That's why I started a documentary film. I've been following it since 2015. FWDistrict5.com is my website, and also the City Council tomorrow night. I'll be playing part 2 of why I've asked that the chair should step down, Lorraine Miller. I believe she should step down if we don't get one. And my reasonings why I'll be showing it, the part 2 of it. Part 1 is already played at City Council, also on my website. There's just too much here. Well, one thing is, now the task force did a great job on the education video. If no one watched that Education 101, that was good. That was very good. It had a lot of very good points, but there were some bad points as well. Like the assistant city manager and someone else called earlier and said 10% voting. That's not true. I have a video on video 7. It's more like less than 4%. Now, in some cities, at 15%, it's a crisis. Here we're at 4%. The second thing is, this whole thing started off wrong. The charter was not advertised. The city spends money on billboards for putting on masks or for when the rodeo comes here, but they don't put no billboards up to advertise as something important. But they said so many times in their meetings how important it is to keep the people involved, let them know, and how they're going to cater us. I've asked the task force to ask council members some questions, and anyway, I'm getting off track just a little bit. Like I said, there's so much here. But one of the main things is that it needs to stop until we put this back on the ballot. Less than 1% voted for this. And the task force and the educational thing and the meetings have never once mentioned money. It's going to cost us around $250,000 or $225,000 a year for 2 more council members. We're over 200 police understaffed. We need to review this. Yes, let's get like Houston used a citizen select task force. Yes, let's get a citizen one, and maybe some of the questions that I've asked this one to do, maybe it will follow those 2. I'll be happy it goes back on the ballot and require 20% to vote for it. And also, that's the other thing. Hispanics and blacks, anybody feel like they're not getting represented? You're not getting represented because you're not voting. Don't tell me there's not more than 3,000 Hispanics in District 5. If they were voting, they would take the seat. They're just not voting. No one is at 4%. So adding 2 more council members is not the core answer to this right now, and especially to 8 council members that don't answer questions now. We got 8 of them. So if you go to my website, you can watch these videos. They're amateur. I made them, but I'm trying to express this, and that was the best way to do it. And I'll be playing one tomorrow night at City Council, part 2 of why Lorraine Miller should step down as chair. I need some honesty. We need some truth, and that's what I'm looking forward, and I'm having a hard time finding it here in this city.
Thank you very much, Mr. Willoughby.
All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good night. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Our next speaker is Fernando Flores, and I believe that Fernando called in, so give me just one second. Okay, Fernando, are you ready?
Me?
Fernando, are you on?
Yes, I'm listening.
Okay, perfect. Well, we are ready for you.
Okay, good evening, Ms. Miller and members of the task force. My name is Fernando Flores. I live here in Fort Worth. I'm here speaking as a representative of the United Hispanic Council, and I'm also a member of Citizens for Independent Redistricting. I've been involved in redistricting for 4 cycles. Now, there has been one constant. Those that rule continue to make the rules about city council redistricting. Because the city has changed so much, it's now majority minority, we need more diversity on the city council. Citizen independent redistricting offers us, or an IRC offers us the best chance to achieve that. And that was also one of the recommendations of the Race and Culture Task Force. So to not do this is to invite unrest in the future. I urge all people from our city to pay attention to what's going on here, and urge the task force to recommend to the city council that they do their jobs and listen to the people. Take a close look at citizen independent redistricting, an IRC to draw city council maps. And that's about all I have. Thank you all. I have nothing but praise for you all for your work and city staff. It's the council that I have a problem with. So again, thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your feedback. Next, we have Janine Lunn. Janine, can you unmute yourself? Okay, I'm going to unmute you. Okay, Janine, are you ready?
I am ready. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. My name is Janine Lund. I'm the current president of the Crestwood Neighborhood Association. I teach general psychology at Tarrant County College, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, but I'm speaking this evening as a concerned citizen and as a voter in Fort Worth. At the last meeting about our redistricting efforts, I heard, this low figure, 10%, now someone has said 4% of people in Fort Worth vote. I can't get that idea out of my head. I urge the city council to reach out to parts of Fort Worth that have low rates of voting and invite their participation. I think that using the local schools, the recreation centers, the churches, to publicize, to explain, and to invite people to participate in the process of drawing and choosing maps for the next city council district. We need to identify who are people in these areas who are people of influence. Public hearings should be held in each of the 8 current council districts, especially to show possible maps that people have drawn before any decision is made on which map to adopt. Inviting the members of the public to learn and use the software to draw a version of new districts, that's a valuable strategy. Access to that software can be made available through the city libraries, recreation centers, and schools. Versions submitted to the public should be identified by the name of the person who drew this map, what data did they use, and what are their reasons behind choosing this arrangement of new districts. We need to publicize these meetings well in advance and follow open meeting requirements. These decisions should be made in the light of day. We need to offer multiple ways for people to comment with at least 10 days for comments. Maps under consideration should be explained clearly with a description of what they're designed to achieve. And recordings of these meetings should be available for people who can't attend at the time. We want this to be a community-wide effort. Too many people feel that their views are not heard and they have given up. I think we need to start by asking people why they don't vote, and really listening to what they say. I hope we can invite all of our community to participate in this important process and draw districts that offer representation to all in Fort Worth. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Miss Gloria Long. Gloria, I'm unmuting you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Gloria Long. I live in the Western Hills North neighborhood over near the Las Vegas Trail Corridor in Council District 3. Dr. Bird is my councilman. And I want to take a moment to thank the city for the efforts that they have made in the past couple of years to improve the lives of people in this Las Vegas Trail area, especially those that live in the many apartment complexes and whose lives have been negatively impacted by the pandemic. On the current subject, as you work to redistrict our city, I applaud your efforts to do so in a manner that encourages transparency in the process. There needs to be dialogue between the city council, or those drawing the maps, and the citizens. We should be included in the process, and our input must be taken seriously and reflected in the maps. Please use our city libraries to provide training for our citizens on the software that will be used so that we may also understand it and use it. City councils must hold robust public hearings as part of the redistricting process. Hearings should be held across the city in every council district to meet the geographic diversity requirement. These meetings need to be held before and after the draft maps are published, and to be well advertised to ensure widespread participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Long. Our next speaker is Ms. Ella Burton. Ms. Ella, I'm going to unmute you 1 second. Okay, we're ready when you are, ma'am.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you to this task force that's gathered to hear our concerns and respond accordingly. I am Ella Burton. I am a native Texan, Fort Worth, but I am a lifelong resident of Lake Como. I represent the Como Neighborhood Advisory Council as their president. And having come here at the latter, so many of my concerns have already been addressed, so I will not recount those, particularly in the, as established in the interim report. My concerns were the watering down of this District 3 as we're expanding westward in Aledo and the Walsh Ranch as we're building up there. So there was a concern there, but I see that in your points 2, 3, and 4 on your recommendation criteria, that's going to be taken care of. Excuse me. And then I want to say ditto to Mr. Bruce Miller and his presentation. Again, I won't try to throw in any more. Just want to put these two things before you and get a response to it. Is there a time frame or a deadline for residents to submit a proposed redistricting plan? And then again, when will this software or the training per se that's accompanying it be available for us to use? And I also want to say to the League of Women Voters and others, I am predicting that you will have a greater voter participation in the days and weeks to come. So look out for that. Those who fear that the vote is not coming, I do think we'll have better representation. My own personal heartbeat with that. So again, if you could address those concerns at your convenience. I think everything else has been satisfied as I've listened to the others this evening. So thank you again for your time and what you've taken out of your lives to do for us in this redistricting task force.
Thank you, Ms. Ella. Okay, our next speaker is Angelica Rozzo. Angelica, I'm going to unmute you 1 second.
Hi.
Okay, we're ready when you are. Hi.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone. My name is Angelica Razo. I am the Texas State Director for Mi Familia Vota. We are a national nonpartisan civic engagement organization whose mission is to promote social and economic justice for the Latino community and our ally communities. We know that historically, the redistricting process has been an ambiguous process that has excluded many communities' ability to participate and to build political power. Given that the city of Fort Worth has a Hispanic population of 40% and growing, we want to ensure an appropriate redistricting process that doesn't dismiss our community's presence and contribution to the area. We appreciate the intentional call for a transparent process, but urge you to consider adopting specific processes that create further transparency and awareness by all communities and hold us accountable to an equitable process. To have true community input and dialogue, we must create a stronger and more inclusive outreach program, one that organizes and engages the public in each of the city council districts. There should be a public hearing in each of the each existing district, and the preliminary map should be prepared and put on display to achieve wide public access. Not only should City Council have public hearings after maps are drawn, but also before they are adopted. Apart from the hearings, the community should have multiple avenues to submit public input, such as online and email submissions or even mail-ins. Ample time should be provided to give public time to give feedback. There should be a window period of at least 10 days from the date of any proposed plan. Council and their staff should respond to the specific public comments on maps and address whether or not a community member's recommendation can be incorporated. We know how important and urgent redistricting is. The final map lines will have consequences for the next decade, and its repercussions can be felt for generations. It's extremely important that community members are part of this process and that the appropriate systems are set up for them to participate in a meaningful way. I urge the task force to put in place specific tactics to ensure a transparent process for drawing fair maps. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your feedback. Okay, and our last speaker is Mr. Ellison. And Mr. Ellison, I believe that I have a PowerPoint for you. You'll hold for just 1 second. I have unmuted you. So let me grab your presentation real quick.
Ms. Hutt, can
Mr.
you hear me?
Ellison? Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, good. All right. How's
1
my
second.
audio?
I think you're perfect. Can you see the screen?
I can. Then I will start.
Okay, just tell me when you want me to move forward, okay?
Very good. I'm Barwick Ellison with Citizens for Independent Redistricting Fort Worth, and I'd like to invite you, the members of the task force, on a little road trip I call the Jerry Meander. Grab your map of your city council districts, get in your car, and just drive along the edges of our districts. Our first stop on page 2 is Boat Club Road near the Northwest Lakes. This is a desolate, mile-long stretch of highway with no houses on either side. No one lives here. It's just a thin thread, page 3, that connects the north and south blobs of District 7. District 2 abuts it on the east, and it absolutely violates the spirit and letter of compact and contiguous that were criteria in the last cycle. Yet this district was approved by the very city council that insists on holding on to the power of redistricting. If you ignore your own criteria, then those criteria, it seems, are meaningless. But I'd like you to take a look at our voting precincts, because these are partly why our council districts are so badly misshapen. Let's go to page 4. Texas voting precincts are required to conform to congressional and state legislative districts, the House and Senate, which are drawn in Austin, also the Justice and County Commissioner precincts, and the State Board of Education districts. The county elections office then draws the precincts to conform to those 6 governmental units, and the county commissioners approve the precincts. But irregularities begin to creep in. Page 5. Take a look at this section of East Fort Worth between Brentwood Stair Road and Meadowbrook Boulevard. They had smooth rectangular boundaries in 2010, but these got inexplicably jagged borders in 2013. You can get a closer look on page 6. These are the building blocks of our city council districts. On page 7 and 8, you'll see a neighborhood along Brentwood Stair Road that's broken up like a sawtooth between districts 4 and 5. And on districts, are you scanning ahead? Okay. And this cutout on pages 9 and 10 across from Eastern Hills High Road, across from Eastern Hills High School, not only splits up these neighborhood homes between districts 4 and 6, but it's also the boundary between Congressional District 33 that stretches from the Stockyards to Dallas Love Field, and District 6 that includes 500,000 residents of Southeast Tarrant County, as well as a couple 100,000 in Ellis and Navarro counties. An independent redistricting commission at the state level might fix this, but you could recommend to the city council that they appoint a commission or instruct the city manager's office to review the county's precinct boundaries, inquire what's driving these irregularities, and try to work with the county elections office to break them up into smaller precincts to smooth out our district boundaries. They could even be made to conform to school districts and attendance zones, as Councilman Moon has long advocated, page 12. I urge the task force to call the council's attention to these suggestions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ellison. I believe we do have one other speaker, Ms. Cox. Let me see if she's still here. Ms. Cox, I'm going to unmute you. Okay, Ms. Cox, are you ready? Geraldine? Okay, it looks like she may have already gotten off. Fernando? That was our last speaker. That was our last speaker.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Chairwoman Miller, if it's in order, I'd like to respond to some of the comments seeking factual clarification.
Well, I agree, Mr. Costa, especially Ms. Burton, about the software. We could kind of tell them when we can expect. I think you said we were going to get some preliminary numbers, and then we would advertise the software so people can draw maps. That would be very helpful.
Yes, ma'am. In response to the question from Ms. Ella Burton, we had been working with the company that supplies our preferred redistricting software, and we anticipate that the software will be available around April of this year. And at that time, we will make the software available to any interested resident, and will provide training in the use of that software, which will enable any resident to configure hypothetical city council districts using existing unofficial population estimates. I say unofficial estimates because we don't yet have the official population counts from the 2020 census. Those counts won't be available probably until August of this year. But in the meantime, between April and August, we'll be able to train interested residents in the use of our software, and residents can begin to configure hypothetical districts using existing population estimates. So that's our time frame for making the software available and then receiving in August the official population counts, and then having been trained in the use of our software, residents can begin to propose official council district boundaries. I'm happy to answer any questions that the task force members might have about that explanation.
I think it's pretty clear what it means, though, task force members and the public. You're going to have to pay attention, and once they start to advertise that these seminars or these workshops are happening, you've got to prepare yourselves now. You can't wait until that data is available and that seminar is upon you. You've got to prepare yourselves now. And I think it's an effort to build coalitions so that people know what they would like the lines to look like. Ella, does that answer the question? And I'd like to throw out one just for the public's sake. So the timeline is that the task force, we will have completed all of our business and made a final report to the council in March, the first week of March. That doesn't mean that public input stops. So there is a portal that people can still ask questions, make suggestions to, correct?
Yes, ma'am. We'll be able to receive questions and comments on the city website.
Good.
There are perhaps two other points that might be worth taking a moment to clarify. One has to do with, and this is just factual, the percentage of Fort Worth citizens who tend to vote in municipal elections. I'm sure that we can get the actual data. In fact, if City Secretary, I think Mary Kaiser is on the line, she's probably able to recite these figures from the top of her head. We've used a figure of 10%. That is a rough average. There are some elections in which the participation rate is greater than 10%, and some elections in which the participation rate is lower than 10%. The percentage also varies from one district to another, and it varies between general elections when we're electing a mayor or city council and bond elections. Bond elections generally have lower voter turnouts than do general elections when we're electing our representatives. When there is an open seat for the mayor's office, there tends to be more competition and greater turnout in elections. We can reasonably expect, since Mayor Price has just announced last week that her intent not to seek another term of office, we can reasonably expect that we'll have a greater turnout in the 2021 election than we have had on the average over the last 10 years, simply because it is an open seat for the mayor's office. But on the average, it's about 10%.
Fernando, this is Mary. You're absolutely correct. In our last election, it was a little over 9% for when we did have the mayor had competition for her seat. And so that was close to 9%, but it does tend to drop down when the mayor's seat is not contested. And but we could certainly provide the task force with those that information, if that would be helpful.
Thank you, Mary. Mary, we're looking forward to seeing you again. I think tomorrow. Ms. Kaiser has been incapacitated by a medical procedure, but I understand we'll be back in action starting tomorrow.
Yes, that is correct.
The other point of clarification, Ms. Miller and task force members, you've received some comments to the effect that the task force on race and culture recommended the creation of an independent redistricting commission. Not to split any hairs, but the task force actually recommended that the city council create a charter review task force that would study the feasibility and desirability of requiring appointment of an independent redistricting commission. So they stopped short of saying you should create such a commission. They said study that issue through a charter review task force. So that's the clarification we wanted to make about what the Task Force on Race and Culture formally recommended in their final report. So we're happy to answer any questions you might have about those points.
Mr. Costa, this is Linda Kennedy. The last time we were all together, you mentioned the number of minority opportunity districts we currently have of our 8. Could you remind us of that?
Yeah, so of the 8 single member districts that we currently have, 5 are classified as minority opportunity districts because in each of those 5, 50% or more of the population consists of African Americans, Hispanics, and other non-white minorities. 2 of the 5 minority opportunity districts are classified as Hispanic opportunity districts. Districts 2 and 9 each contains over 50% Hispanic population.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was wondering.
Ms. Miller, back to you.
Mr. Bradshaw, were you seeking recognition?
Yeah, I was just curious. Why would we hold our elections in May when, you know, I would say that that probably is one reason why we have lower overall voter turnout, when we could do it like other cities do it in November when you have most of your elections, and then, you know, people are gonna, they're gonna go out for those elections, and I think you would have higher citizen participation. And is that something that's ever been considered? It just seems like that would be a natural.
That's a good question. Under state law, municipalities may schedule their elections either in May or in November. There was a time, maybe 20 years ago, when there were 4 dates, 4 times of the year when the municipalities could hold their elections, and some of you may remember when we held certain elections, let's say in February or August, but now we're limited to May and November. May happens to be when traditionally the city of Fort Worth has held municipal elections. There is no legal reason why we couldn't move it to November, but that would mean that one term of office would be limited to a year and a half, or expanded to 2.5 years while we make that transition. I'm not aware of any extensive discussion about that topic in recent memory. Mary Kaiser or Leanne Guzman may wish to add their own comments, but I'm not aware of any serious discussion about it.
Fernando, Ms. Cox was trying to ask a question earlier and she was having some technical issues. So she sent me her questions, her comments in the chat room. If I could share that real quickly with you.
Of course.
And it's Geraldine Cox. Her comments are that the city should have taken the recommendation of the Race and Culture Task Force. Many of us do not trust the city council to draw inclusive districts going forward. If you want more citizen participation, you should provide neutral persons an opportunity to create more open government through the mechanism of an independent redistricting commission. And then she wants to know if she can get email addresses for the task force members, or if there's a generic email so that she can send more comments.
I would suggest that additional comments be sent to the redistricting website. Generally speaking, we, unless the task force were to request it, we generally don't release contact information for board, commission, and task force members in the interest of preserving their privacy. If, however, you want us to release your contact information, we'll be glad to do so.
And the direct email address for the task force members is Fort Worth. It's fwconnection@fortworthtexas.gov. And then any emails that go to that email address will be forwarded to the task force.
Thank you, Catherine.
Fernando, this is Mary again. In answer to the question about the election date in May, it is also included in our charter. And unless something happens at the legislature that would preclude it, the only way that can be changed would be a charter election to change that date. There are several bills that appear to be wanting to push a lot of municipalities to move their election to November. But for those of us that have it in our charter, that's always a concern that the legislature doesn't necessarily have the ability to just make that change unilaterally, that it would require a vote of the citizens, just like they voted to put it in May in the charter. So that's where it is.
Ms. Kaiser?
Yes, ma'am.
It's Lorraine. So would it be a cost-saving matter to the city to do it in November as opposed to paying for a May election if we're already voting in November? Besides probably the length of a term that would have to be expanded or reduced, would it not save money to move it to November?
It would depend on who all is participating in that election, and because we do contract with the county, and if there are a lot of other entities and there's some sharing of resources, there may be some abilities to save some money. But if not, then it would be about the same as it is in our May election. And we do have some savings in May, and especially because Tarrant County has gone to the, you don't have to vote in your individual precincts on election day. They do the vote centers. So that has saved us some money. But it really depends election to election whether the cost savings would be. There could be some. But ours are in odd numbered years, and of course the even numbered years, like this past November, is when you would probably achieve your greatest cost savings.
Cost savings.
Yeah, but the other issue is you do have a higher turnout. You also have a very long ballot, and so there's a lot of things to vote on in the November election. And due to the rules in the election code, cities and schools are at the bottom of the ballot. So you do tend to get a lot of undervotes in the city. People skip over those elections. So there's pros and cons to both May and November. But
okay. All right.
Chairwoman Miller, question, please. This is Teresa.
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Costa. I wanted to get clarification on something. You mentioned that there were 5 districts that are considered opportunity districts because of their population. What I wanted to find out was that based on the fact that they are the number of registered voters or just the population as a whole? Because I
just population.
Okay.
Although I think it's important to note, and I think you're pointing in this direction, that merely having 50% or more minority population by no means equates to 50% or more voting participation. We have to factor in the fact that Hispanic populations, for example, tend to be younger, tend to have a higher percentage who are below voting age. We have a lower percentage of citizenship and a lower percentage of registered voters. And finally, a lower percentage of voting participation. So ultimately, the key is to register to vote and to exercise the right to vote, regardless of your ethnicity.
Yeah. Consistent voting. Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Good question.
So are there any questions that our viewing audience may have?
The only other comment that was here, Miss Lorraine, was they would, hold on just one second. Well, there's several comments, but Ms. Cox, since she can't speak, did say that that she is concerned about having virtual meetings because she doesn't feel like they're accessible for people without computers that don't have microphones and cameras to be able to fully participate. And I think everyone else is able to share their comments verbally.
You know, we did just for clarity's sake. Originally, we had planned to have in-person public hearings out in the neighborhoods. But with this pandemic, I think we all mutually agreed as a task force that we just couldn't take that risk. Even if you're all masked up and everybody had gloves on, it's just such a high risk to a chance to take. And so we thought that this was, it's not optimal because I think you have more give and take when you're sitting in front of someone and looking at them and they're looking back at you and you're answering their questions spontaneously. But this was the best alternative because we're in the midst of a pandemic and we just couldn't take that risk. Sal?
Yes, hold on a second, let me unmute myself.
I can hear you. Hey, Sal.
We can hear you.
I just wanted to comment, did bring up a good point that if the charter permitted, if you could move elections to November while you may have more turnout, you have to balance that with the trade-off of partisanship. Municipal elections are nonpartisan. Unfortunately, sometimes when you go to November elections, while more people vote, then these elections are partisan because at the top of the ballot, you do have partisan races, you know, and so that may be another reason why a lot of municipalities and school districts have elections in May, even in their charter, was to avoid, you know, the partisanship. But it is true, some cities and school districts have moved elections to November, and they do have higher turnout. But I will say that in some of those races, partisanship does get involved in those races. And, you know, it is a democracy. For the most part, we've been a two-party state. There are independent parties, other parties, but that's the trade-off you would make if you move to a November election.
That's a great observation, Sal. Great. Anything else? Yes.
There was one other thing that was just sent to me. David wants to know if you can clarify if this task force has the ability to recommend an IRC. He says he thinks that you had originally said the council hadn't given the body the ability to make that recommendation. So they're confused why you're talking about it.
While we're, say the last sentence.
He said that he thought that you initially had said the council had not given the task force the ability to make the recommendation. And so several people are asking why you're talking about the IRC and talking about elections, changing elections.
No, that has nothing to do with the IRC and changing the elections. You know, this is a public hearing, so that's what we want to hear. If people want to voice their opinions about an independent redistricting committee, that's what they're free to do, and that's what we want to hear. And if that is the hue and cry of the residents of Fort Worth, so be it. But we need to hear it through the public record, and that's why we're doing it.
Don't see anything else that was said to me privately. Everything else, someone could speak if they wanted to. Does anyone else have any other questions that they wanted to ask of the task force? Lorraine?
Well, I think on behalf of the Redistricting Task Force, I want to thank everyone that participated tonight, because that's the whole purpose here, is to have the residents of Fort Worth come and voice their concerns, and to know that those concerns will be relayed to the Fort Worth City Council for their consideration. This is democracy in action. This is why the task force wanted to do these public hearings, and I thank everyone that took the time this evening to join us and have your say. Thank the staff for their preparation. Yes.
And I just want to remind everyone, if you signed in with an email address, we'll send you a link to the video as soon as we're done so that you'll have that.
Yeah, so we really do thank the staff for what they've done. Now we've got 2 more hearings. Tuesday, the 19th of January, 6 p.m. in the evening. It will be in Spanish. That does not mean, though, that you can't tune in and hear what people are saying, because they've already explained they're going to be the captions and the top line, so we'll know the gist of the conversation. And then the last one will be Thursday, January 21, again, 6 p.m. We hope that people will tune in and make their comments known. More importantly, I think it's important that people, even after the task force makes this final report to the city council, that you guys still make comments, ask questions, go to the Fort Worth, Texas.gov website, redistricting, and put in information. All of this will get collated and sent to the council, so it's not an effort in futility. What we want to make sure that the views of Fort Worth residents are given to the council for their consideration as they sit and draw these lines. So participate, stay awake, stay alert, and get involved. Any of the other task force members have any parting comments? Mr. Shore, you always have good, thoughtful comments. You and Mr. DeVito.
Yeah, the task force next meeting will be to discuss, as I understand it, we are going to be discussing the procedures, which is the point where some of the speakers have indicated that we should consider an independent redistricting commission. One of the things that strikes me as being really important is that given where we are now, even if we make that recommendation to have a commission, that will be no substitute for defining both the criteria and the procedures that the council itself would use if the council proceeds on the current course. And so, as interested as I am in hearing about the citizens' desire for an independent redistricting commission, what I would find most valuable would be a discussion of these specific kinds of procedures that everyone would like the council to follow if it makes the decision. In other words, so we've already mentioned a few of these kinds of things, about things such as map drawing maybe should be all in public. But there are many, many others that regardless of whether whether a map is being drawn by the council or by an independent Redistricting Commission, there need to be procedures defined. And that's one of the things that we are charged with doing. So again, for everyone who's putting all their eggs in the Independent Redistricting Commission process, I would suggest that you also provide your thoughts about how the council should proceed when the council does, makes the redistricting. And all these things, open meetings, education, more publicity, better timing to provide more ability for the public to speak. All of those are part of what goes into the procedures package.
Yeah.
So thanks to all of you who have made those recommendations tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Shore. Mr. DeVito, any of the council, the task force members have any parting words for our friends and neighbors?
No, ma'am. I believe it's all been well covered.
I had one last.
Yes. Hi.
Ms. Miller.
Yes.
Yeah, so my only last comment was, so for the people that are running for city council and for mayor in the upcoming election, you as voters, if the IRC is very important to you, you can ask the candidates that are running and say, as a council member or as mayor, would you support an IRC in the future? And that's another avenue where you can express your opinion and have your candidates express their opinion as well. Just throwing that out there.
Great suggestion, Mr. Bradshaw. You put them on the record. Yeah. Anyone else? This is fascinating. I'm looking forward to the 19th because I think I hope, Sal and Teresa, that we're going to get a good turnout of residents that can also voice their opinion. So we haven't gotten to the point where we're Korean or what else, but we will. Everybody has, that's the beauty of this. Everybody has a chance to have their input. Someone was saying something?
Burmese will be our next group.
Hello, Tracy.
Hi. So I'm just going to put that out there. The Texas Civil Rights Project is going to be doing some training on how to comment, which was formerly called testifying, and they've kind of changed the wording to make it more palatable. But that training is going to come into Tarrant County in the next week. They actually have it scheduled for Tuesdays and Thursdays at 3 p.m. And it's a 45-minute video training that gives you kind of a backstory on redistricting and then what is to come and as far as commenting for the legislature.
Yeah, because this is not just the city of Fort Worth. This is the legislature that's going to be involved in redistricting. And this is the year, someone said that the legislature probably cannot get through its agenda and get to redistricting now, and they may have to have a special session just on redistricting. So yes. This is not just a one-stop place. That's why redistricting is so important to the makeup, your representational makeup for not only the city but the state. Yes. Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Costa?
I think we're good, Ms. Miller. If we had fun tonight with the WebEx technology, we'll have even more fun next time in WebEx in Spanish.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But we really appreciate Sal Espino and Teresa Ayala graciously agreeing to lead the way in providing interpretive services for the task force and staff.
And I think we'll all learn a little Spanish out of this. This will be good.
Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, de nada. Okay, thanks. Thank you, everyone that took the time to make your comments tonight. We appreciate it. Au revoir. Oh, that's French. Good night.